Evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. and we are meeting at the Gloucester High School at 32 Leslie O. Johnson Road in Gloucester. Consistent with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you are watching on a computer or device, there's a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. And I ask, I would say the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. And I ask that you stand and join me in this. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item of business is oral communications. If we have anybody in attendance that would like to speak, now is your opportunity. And I don't see anybody on the call, so I assume I'll see no raised hands. First in a long time. It's first in a long time. Yes, it has begun. Okay, we will start with, we will move on to recognitions. Does anybody have any recognitions they would like to put on the line?
Yeah. I want to recognize a bunch of things at Beeman. We had a really fabulous demonstration night where students in all grades performed musical numbers, and then we also saw all their marine biology work in the hall, so that was great. And then we had a very successful field day, which was a really lovely end to the year. Everybody was, smiling and happy, and I can't say everyone, but almost everyone I saw, and it was a beautiful day and not too hot, and so many kudos to the staff and the volunteers who made that happen. Also to generous gardeners who just cleaned up the entire front of the Beeman, the entire garden in this very dramatic way, so that'll look gorgeous. And since we have backyard growers, guests also for the backyard growers, salad harvest that netted tons and tons of lettuce for the open door as well as for our cafeteria. So lots of great things happening in the last couple of weeks.
Two for me. One would be the O'Malley graduation yesterday, I believe it was. Just a wonderful ceremony. Principal Beatty did a wonderful job with it, and it was very encouraging to see so many kids, especially high honors. There was a lot of high honors kids in that group, and they just did a wonderful job. So hats off to O'Malley. And the second one would be the GHS track team that traveled down south and did very well in the national meet down there. So I think one of the teams, as discussed, finished place second overall. So that's pretty impressive. So
Can I follow on with some details?
You bet.
So we can recognize by name. So the girls sprint medley relay team of Megan Hurd, Sky Shalino, Darcy Muller, and Caroline McKinnon placed second overall, winning silver medals and earning All-American status. The mixed 4x400 meter relay of Andrew Coelho, Caroline McKinnon, Darcy Muller, and Colby Rochford placed fifth, earning medals in All-American status as well. And I know there were two others that competed, but they did not have the medal. But anyway, it was great to see so many people qualified to go to nationals and then perform really well. Oh, the other two competing were Abby Stouffer and I think Amy Gardner. Okay.
I want to recognize the West Parish Field Day. Similarly, it was a beautiful day. People were having a blast. I want to shout out Miss Elliott, the PE teacher there, who just totally rocked the day. It seems like a ton of work. People had a blast. I was exhausted at the end. So were the kids. Can't wait for next year.
And I just will show a couple pictures from some things folks have already mentioned. Second here. So the elementary schools all had their 5th grade moving up ceremonies. So you have photos here from Plum Cove on the left, their front circle, and then on the right from East Gloucester. And then Mr. Melvin talked about was the O'Malley 8th grade ceremony yesterday. Out in the field for the 2nd year in a row, and for the 2nd year in a row, we had fantastic weather and great speakers. Ms. Gleason, first of all, and also there's Sean Buckley, the student speaker as well.
Yes.
And then on to the highlight and the culmination of so much work and effort from so many people. GHS graduation. Was it a week ago Sunday? I'm losing track. Yeah, a week ago Sunday. And if I could show a video, I would, of the caps going up, but I can't show a video because it never works. So, but anyway, just a great culminating events all across our schools in the past couple weeks.
Kathy, can I have one?
Yes.
So Vets West, as they're calling themselves these days, stopped by City Hall to perform the band and chorus with their last Thursday, I believe it was, for a morning and afternoon session. So I was able to stop by and catch a little bit of each show. It was wonderful to see that my alma mater performing at City Hall.
Very nice. I'm sure it's thrilling to perform at City Hall as well for
Yes.
them. Okay. Exciting times, and we'll have a little bit of break of any recognitions because there won't be in school stuff going on. So, okay, the next item is the consent agenda. Anybody have any items they want to remove from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent?
Second.
Okay, Graham, may we have a roll call vote?
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Mayor Verda,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
and Chairperson Clancy.
Yes. We will move on to deliberations on educational issues. And the superintendent's report. Did you want to?
Yeah, I'm just going to give a quick superintendent's report.
Okay.
I've actually done half of it already. So just quickly. So all I have to report on tonight, after the celebrations that I already shared, are simply our retirees from this school year. These are folks that retired sometime during the school year. So Donna Aiello, who's been working for the Gloucester schools for over 25 years. Alina Alexander from West Parish, been working for almost 16 years for us. Jane Brancaloni from Veterans, just about 20 years for GPS. Lorraine Davis is moving on, retiring after almost 14 years. 14 school years, I should say. Barbara Dundon is moving on from being the assistant superintendent's assistant after 32 and a half years working with Gloucester Public Schools. Josh Bowser is retiring for working at O'Malley. Beth Goldberg retired last fall after 21 years serving the school in General Gloucester. Cynthia Grinnell finished the preschool in the wintertime. Jonah Clicks is retiring from West Parish as a kindergarten teacher after working for us for 20 years. William McGovern has been a 2nd grade teacher at Beeman most recently and has worked for the Gloucester Public Schools for 23 years. Linda Petrino is a GHS teacher, has worked for us for over 13 years. Jean Phillips, Beeman speech and language pathologist, has worked for the Gloucester Public Schools since 1989. That's 33 years. So seeing if anyone alive in the room is younger than that. There might be, but I don't know.
Sorry, what was that last name again?
For 33 years, Jean Phillips.
Okay. Beeman, all right, yeah.
Carl Sacco, retiring as guidance counselor from GHS, been working with us for 17 years. Carrie Saley from Veterans has been working for Gloucester Schools for 25 years. Cynthia Smith retired in October of last fall from GAP, and she's been working with Gloucester Public Schools for 37 years. Sandra Spar is retiring from the preschool after 30 years of working with our schools. Doug Zirk is retiring from O'Malley. He's a sixth grade science teacher, has worked here for 30 years. A couple other folks are moving on this summer. Rosalie Ferrara, who's been with us for more than 21 years. She's been the special education administrative assistant. She's retiring in July. And then also just one transition, Anne Marie Jordan, our director of preschool, is moving on at the end of this year as well. So a lot of talent and experience, and probably a lot of stories. I heard some of them while I was at the GTA retirement dinner. Mayor Berg was there as well, so was Greg Bach, and also what I heard there from folks like Eileen and Linda Petrino were just, Jane Brancoloni were just a tremendous amount of first of all, stories about a lot of people, a lot of students and staff and friends, but just a lot of reverence for that they were able to serve the youth and children and families of Gloucester, and also just a lot of satisfaction in how rewarding it's been for ups and downs and trials and tribulations, but difficult years and good years, challenges and whatnot, but overall just really, really pleased with their careers and what they've accomplished. So folks are moving on to all different paths from here. So
Thank you for recognizing.
yeah.
So,
And then the last piece is just our current meetings, summer meeting, will be June 29th next week, August 3rd. You hear some likely topics. These aren't cut in stone yet because things can change between now and then. And August 24th. We're suggesting to have instead of August 10th meeting, which would be normally scheduled the second Wednesday in the month. We'll be on vacation, so we're suggesting to have it on August 3rd instead. And by the 24th, we should know a lot of different things, including we'll have the update on the student handbooks, and then also probably updates on school openings as well, school opening the following week. So I'm going to get too far ahead of us into thinking about next year, but just wanted to give folks a heads up on what our meetings look like. And that is all, and we can move on to our guests.
So we have 3 guests from Backyard Growers. Thank you for coming. We have Allison DePoirier, Executive Director, Megan Stratton, Interim Program Director, and Haley Small, Garden Educator.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I know many of you, most of you from my time previously, spent about 6 years running Backyard Grower School programs, and really excited. Seems like a lot of you, some of you already know Allison well, but our founding executive director, Laura Lepanka, moved on this spring, and we now have Allison Fiore. And personally extremely excited to introduce her and just to have her on Backyard, leading Backyard Growers, and be back to be able to work with her for a little while this summer. So.
Thanks.
Madam Chair, I'm going to hand my laptop to that.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm excited to meet all of you, and I have actually 2 neighbors here representing Magnolia, which is exciting. I had worked in Gloucester for like several years, but now about 8 years ago, and so I'm really excited to be back and working in the community and returned with like a couple of small children that will be in the public school system in a couple of years. So I'm really excited to be here and excited to be working alongside all of you, giving opportunities to students and community members in Gloucester. So thanks for having us. Haley is going to be presenting just a recap of this school year, the work that she's been doing.
Yeah, again, I've met many of you throughout this wild year that we've had in the schools. My name is Haley. I work in the school garden educator role that was actually developed just about a year ago to the day. I had my first day in this role. I used to teach 7th and 8th grade mathematics over at Salem Public Schools, and I worked with the food distribution emergency efforts throughout the pandemic, and that kind of led me into this role in food access, but also working with children. I also am a master's candidate for my master's of arts in teaching at Holyoke College, so it's been really awesome to get to still kind of navigate like the nascent years of my teaching experience, but also being able to bring like a wealth of knowledge from my experience with teaching into a role that was primarily food core led and is now an actual staff role. Did you get the slides?
Yep, Maria, can you give me?
Yeah, so we got a little presentation. You guys have also just got a little piece of paper in front of you. That went out to the kids. Sorry, I'm gonna stand up just because I feel like I'm teaching. It went out in the backpacks to the kids last week after we had our final harvest and our final cafeteria celebration. It's actually all the recipes that I've made using local produce in the cafeterias this year that the kids have gotten to try. Which we'll get to see some visualization of that in a little bit. There's also a whole bunch of fun facts and by the numbers, because I'm a math person, on the back of it as well, which we'll get to explore today. So we can hop right into the first one. So starting from our youngest guys that we've got working within our programs, kids at the Gloucester Preschool as well as Pathways. This year by the numbers with those two groups of kids as young as 2 years old and as old as about 5 or 6. We had 16 classes from Gloucester Preschool and 10 classes at Pathways for Children who were able to plant, grow, and harvest throughout 2 experiences, one being a root vegetable harvest that they were able to bring home to their families, and one being a leafy greens salad days experience that they were able to taste test in their classrooms and on site as part of the salad days picnic that we held for them. So the produce that went home to the families supported the kind of community-based aspect that we implement in our programming, where we're trying to involve everyone who is involved with that child's health and well-being, but also giving them the agency to be able to try things and have fun new experiences within their school and understanding the garden as an extension of that environment. We're also really excited to return to full-scale programming, where we've had to kind of modify for the past couple of years based on the changing environment of the garden within the school. At 4 of the 5 elementary schools, we'll talk about our one outlier in a little bit, including our 2 major harvests, as well as 8 different taste tests throughout the year. That's what's included in that little flip book. Laura is very familiar with the taste test. We have some examples of the different things we have tried this year, as well as some of the students' thoughts and opinions as based by the sticker votes that they do. Pretty successful, not gonna lie. Found out that they're really into pickles this year, which is pretty fun. And it's just like a great time. It's a great way to like uplift the school food environment for kids. Kids are more open to trying new things. They see connections between themselves and their homes with the food that they're eating, as well as in a time where food can be really scarce. The supply chain has its many issues. I'm certain you are all no stranger to this, whether the grocery store or your kids getting lunch and having mystery meals some days at the elementaries. We were able to supplement over 600 pounds of produce from the school gardens onto the cafeteria. So a big effort this year was being able to provide these neat taste test experiences, but also looking at more systemic ways so that we can ensure the most local and fresh produce is available to the children who need it most, which are our kids.
Sorry.
You're good. I know it's enthralling that vocabulary law. Salad days specific to that, just because it just closed out on Friday. Laura was there. We really had a massive amount of greens this year that we were able to grow. It was really fantastic to see actually. That again supplemented that effort in trying to create a more long-lasting approach to local food access and being able to extend the availability of greens in the kitchen, which is such a common item. It's so simple and easy for us to grow as a solution to an existing problem of food access with the supply chain issues. So that we're able to allow the produce to continue onto the cafeteria trays after the taste test had concluded, which is really exciting. And if you're a fan of Marvin Gaye, he's often in our garden asking what's growing on. None of the kids get it. It's only for me. Thank you for laughing. Again, with taste tests, we served over 9,000 servings. I still have to count up the salad days. I think we've cracked 10,000 servings of vegetables this year being given out in the cafeterias, distributed through the taste test program that you've seen some memorabilia for. We were able to explore some really wild stuff this year, which was really interesting to see the kids engage with. We've got a kid right here with some celeriac, which is a celery root, which some of you might have never even heard of before. We had rutabaga fries, which we got a rave review from my friend Vincenzo down at Beeman. And just, again, trying to really consistently support a child's understanding of their role within our food system and the ways in which they can support what's local and communal to our area. So our last school that we were not able to do the traditional programming return, and we still had to be flexible with it. Obviously, it was Veterans Elementary. We knew that we wanted to continue supporting them, and also with the kind of neatness of the location of them at St. Anne's being right across the street from Burnham's Field, which we are known for that garden. We were able to build these 2 brand new beautiful beds right behind Yellow Sub Shop for those kids to all be able to interact with the garden in new and exciting ways, honestly, because it's challenging to have 210 kids harvest from just 2 beds, but we were able to ensure that every single child from that school had access to a planting, maintaining, harvesting, and eating experience this spring. We also held a cooking workshop through the YMCA with kids from the Vets After School program. Those are my 2 friends right there making fresh pasta. They were able to fill the beds with soil as well, so we were able to understand the implements of a community bed, what goes into the building of a community garden, how do we work together to establish these places, and a pumpkin exploration, which is right there. It was incredibly fun, and Mr. Fiscal was able to smash a pumpkin with a hammer. Really good time, lots of learning happening there. So just a really trying to meet this school where it's at and understanding the challenges that come with being in that space and offering, again, like more of those traditional experiences that kids in the other schools are getting and allowing them that same access. Moving up to O'Malley, our friends over at 6th through 8th grade, we have an existing program that's been spearheaded by Meg when she was in my role with the 6th and 7th graders, where 6th graders grow corn and 7th graders grow wheat. And for a long time, we've been trying to push to establish an 8th grade program, and we were able to accomplish that this year through investigative science. Really exciting, getting kids working with soil science, soil testing, understanding the health of a garden and what it needs to be able to create the most healthy product for the other 6th and 7th graders to then grow and utilize in their programs. We planted about 97,300 seeds, which was a neat number to kind of come up with, to think of like how many seeds and plants that is. And we were finally able to access all 3 grades, which going forward into next year, as our 8th grade pilot was for the spring, we're excited to finally be able to have all 600 kids at O'Malley involved in consistent programming throughout the year in their school gardens. These are some of the rave reviews we received from 7th graders, which if you've ever been around a 7th grader, it can be challenging for them to give a review about anything. And so it's just really great to see the way, all the different things that the kids kind of get out of our programming, because when they turn from elementary to middle, it gets a lot more academic, as does just like their school day in general. But it's still just really neat ideas of like, Haley showed my class how to work together. I love what BOIG does and think that is a great way to teach kids more about food versus like, I like that it was messy and we got to see how people did it throughout history. So there's that academic connection. It's really neat to kind of see the different touch points that kids are accessing themselves and reflecting on throughout their work with us. And to kind of sum up all of our programming, every student in grades K-8 experienced at least 3 garden visits this year, all the while learning to continue to grow food for themselves and their community. Here's some wonderful snapshots of all the different things they got to do. So what is next? What we're looking forward to in the upcoming year. I'll be staying in this role through the summer and now coming into my second role, the second year in this role, and kind of understanding what's ahead of me and what's to be expected, as well as having new support from Allison and Meg throughout the summer. We are looking to start implementing some more professional development opportunities for our kitchen managers and staff. Those people are really talented and they're excited to learn, and we want to be able to invest in them so that they feel an equal partnership and opportunity for us throughout our programming together. That's okay. We're also looking at, again, with the challenges we're seeing within sourcing local produce, trying to establish the fewest food miles available to what's going on to those cafeteria trays, is potentially an additional planting and harvesting that would be continuous of greens for the kitchens, because that's such a staple for them to be able to use. And lastly, our full-fledged, completely expansive 6 to 8 people, agriculture, and environment curriculum being delivered at O'Malley for the first time across every single grade, every single child within that school. And so to conclude, and you're welcome to ask me any questions or email me or talk to any of my colleagues here about the work that we've been doing, some of which you guys have seen firsthand are in the backpacks when your kids come home from school. We really do believe to plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow and understanding that the kids that we got in our schools are also that tomorrow. It's important that we continue to invest in this program that allows them to enrich themselves so deeply as members of our community. So thank you so much for all that you do and for allowing us to come and chat, as well as allowing us to enter the schools and work with the kids that we love so much and we love to have within our gardens, getting their hands dirty, enjoying themselves, learning so much more about themselves and their community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you have questions,
I
anything
don't
to
have
share?
a question, I just have a comment. Well, I've been working with backyard growers from just about the beginning of the program, before they were in the schools even. And one of the things that I think doesn't even, I don't know if you even, I know you see it, Haley, but I remember when Meg would come to the schools and when Haley comes to schools, part of what happens on these, we wear these posters.
Oh, that's right.
And the kids, you go around and it's become, they have a habit now, so tried it, liked it, loved it. And you know, the last one with the greens, like there were so few tried it. There were liked it or mostly loved it, but they're excited to respond. And the way this program is developed, I mean, there's also, they get stamps, there's just all this stuff at the elementary level. And I've seen kids who don't eat vegetables. I mean, I have seen plenty of kids who are like, nope, nope, don't eat that. Nope, not gonna touch. And then they learn how good vegetables can be. And it's sort of a remarkable program in that way. And Haley as a teacher, when she's out with the students, and I don't know if others here have seen this, like, you know, it is not so easy to have like, you know, 20 first graders, you know, pulling out lettuce. But somehow it's just, she's able to make it exciting and fun and supportive of the teacher. And it's just, I think, a really phenomenal experience for our students to understand where their food comes from. And then as they go to O'Malley to learn the science of it, I think it's just a really, really powerful and important program.
Well, first, Haley, could you step in front of the camera?
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole world can see you with your black eye.
I can get the other one on, put it on the back.
I just wanted to add, you know, thank you for all the work you do around the city for the schools and just for the neighborhoods. I know you're going to be looking to expand. Did you get the grant or still seeking the grant to expand it
I know we
to
got
Burnham's?
it.
You got it?
Yeah, wait. Yeah.
Great, so it's expansion at Burnham's Field. So thank you so much. We can talk about creative expansion to other areas of city-owned parcels. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of really like one of the most exciting things as someone who's come in and out of the programming and the backyard for years. It's just watching those kids, then they go home and they have a garden at Willowwood, and then they come to school and there's a garden, and they come to 6th grade and they're the littlest ones again, but they have a garden and they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing there. And it's been really cool to watch that.
It's like innate for these kids because it has been like such a continuous.
And they just
part
like
of them.
take over the class sometimes, which is awesome.
Yeah, you know, that smoothie sign, I'm surprised so many kids just I just tried a thing. I mean, smoothies are wonderful. I mean, you can fool kids with like, maybe it's the color, I don't know, but I'm surprised the numbers, less stickers in the top there, but I was wondering about the professional development collaboration with the cafeteria staff.
Yeah.
What is that gonna be like?
Well, so in the past, we have actually, like pre-pandemic years, you know, we've done different opportunities. When we had a farm to school grant with the partnership with the Open Door and Gloucester School Schools, we brought kitchen staff and their farm school coordinator from Chicopee to come work with our food service staff, and that was really effective because they just like are, you know, all speaking the same language and all facing the same challenges, and they were sharing some of their tricks for a program that is in Chicopee has a lot of investment of infrastructure, but then ways that they've been able to turn that into like getting the kids to eat more apple slices and stuff like that. So a lot of just industry knowledge, honestly, sharing, which is really important for them, and honestly just like feeling really valued because these women are incredible. And then other times we brought in chefs because we just often have sold different restaurants from Beacon Street Farm, or we've brokered a lot of those stuff, relationships there, and had them do a cooking workshop with the cooks and kind of just like celebrate them as chefs who are interested in cooking and want to try new things and want to add new things to the menu. So we're thinking this late summer, fall, doing some combination of those things. They've asked if we could potentially get someone from Western Massachusetts or another district again in to talk to them because they really enjoyed that. But we're open to whatever Martha Joe would like us to help support.
Which she has spoke to us about it, and I'd say for these case tests, about 50% of it is what's going on the floor with the kids and them trying the foods, as well as 50% being back in the kitchen, and also bringing in like a celery root to all these women who are like, I had to Google that when you emailed me and told me you were having them try it. I had no idea what it was. And then the gym teacher at EGS, Mr. Rounds, is like a huge proponent, and so is custodian Mike, and they come in and they're like, what do you mean this smoothie's green? Why is it green? What's in it? Can I make this at home? I have this dietary restriction. I'm having trouble getting this into my diet. And it's again, just that whole community. And it's so much not just like getting kids to eat vegetables, as it is like the school foods environment supports all eaters in all ways that we can. We want each other to be healthier. We want each other to be able to eat good food that's good for our community. And this is like a direct action.
Yeah, another thing is like, the hesitancy that you get from students, of course, that could come from the home, of course. So is there a way to bridge that gap to maybe reach the parents?
Yeah, I'd say these little booklets that you got with the recipes went right home. So it's like, oh, I can make this when I'm at home this summer when these things are in season, as well as we have a ton of parent volunteers come in as well. And for a lot of times, they are also like, oh, I've never seen that before. I've never thought to do that. Or, oh, I have a friend or a grandmother, or I am growing this thing and I don't know what to use it in. So it is really trying to do that, reach out just beyond the school doors into the community so that it is more interwoven and that environment is then touched at home in a positive way.
Well, we also, like Laura kind of mentioned, like we put like stamps on their hands, stickers and stuff like that. So it's a very celebrated thing that the hope is that then they go home and their parents like, you tried it, what did you try? What are you doing? And the kids do get really excited, and having had a lot, like interact with a lot of parent volunteers over the years, they'll be at the taste test and they'll be almost like a little skeptical, and then they'll see these kids like shoveling lettuce into their mouths and they're like, you don't eat that at home. So like there are like, we try to provide as many opportunities with take home things, and just we have like a full-time communications person that's getting the word out, and also just in all of those community gardens, we like to try to make as many of those connections between those programs as possible, because a lot of those kids go to Burnham's Field, play there, hang out, and they see things they're familiar with, or live at Riverdale or Willowwood or different sites that we work at.
I could see them going to the grocery store with their parents and say, come on, we gotta make pickles.
No, the pickles we got from Maitland Mountain Farm in Salem, and the number of kids that when I came back with Green Monster smoothies were like, I made a trip to Salem with my family and I made them go directly to the farm and but like, isn't that so great? I was like, oh, they have them like come and grow up the street, but like you went right to the source. I love that for you.
Or we've
So
had
great.
parents tell us that like their kids are begging them to buy beets now and like, things
Yeah,
like that.
it's like really crazy how much it changes the school food environment and the home food environment. Exactly.
So I have a question. Who,
Yeah.
I know you obviously can coordinate with the food service staff, but who else, when you're growing, like, are you coordinating through the principal, through the classroom teacher?
Yeah, we work directly with the principals to set any of our major dates and kind of the agenda for the year. And then they are kind of usually our conduit to the teachers to make sure it's like a really school-wide celebrated thing. Not that there's really any teachers who don't want to come to the garden for a little while, especially now. And then we also work directly with the food service director, Martha Joe, as well as all the kitchen leads on every taste test that we do, as well as all the nurses to make sure there's no allergy or dietary, diabetic children who like need special adjustments to what we're serving. So, and then we also work with the janitors because they help us with the coast keys and like all the custodial stuff. So we really end up knowing a lot of the people who are hanging out at the schools.
Yeah. And then a lot of folks will seek us
And the
out.
secretaries.
And interesting, I was gonna say secretaries, a lot of like the physical education staff will seek us out. A lot of art and ELL staff will tend to seek us out, special education staff, like those folks who are kind of in those roles where it's like, oh, I can see like a neat niche for like my specific kids or my specific focus in what you're doing. So really neat, as well as parents from PTO, et cetera. It really does take a whole village here, so.
Yeah, a couple of comments or questions. First of all, Haley, I was watching you fold these over there. Maybe the most intricate fold I've ever seen.
I tried and I couldn't do it.
There's an instructional on there, but it's apparently not very good.
Patiently watching you trying to figure out how to do that. No chance on that. I shove a lot of stuff in my mouth. It's usually not lettuce. It's completely different. But
Everything can be healthy.
I apologize for not really being my lack of knowledge about the backyard grows. I've kind of brought myself up to speed on it a little bit, and I really appreciate your enthusiasm about it. Two quick questions, or I guess three quick questions. One is, how about at the new school? Do we have a place put aside for?
That's something I've been in like very rudimentary talks with Matt Fiscal about where the garden will go. There will be point blank, but we have not established like physical location necessarily.
With the West Parish School back when, that's actually how that Burnham School Garden started, is that we built them that temporary garden that then was transitioned to a community garden space. But actually we worked with the building staff when they were kind of in their final, and that's the building staff, the contractors,
Yeah.
when they were in the final stages, they built the garden. So we're, I mean, open to whatever's gonna work best for that space, but very hopeful that we'll be able to just start them right up as soon as they're in the building.
The other question I had was two questions. One is, there's been talk, I think one of the middle schools did a presentation on like a food locker at O'Malley. Is there any connection between what we're doing with backyard growers and
Yeah.
potential to supply a food locker?
Oh, yeah. We had a similar situation with the high school, with the food locker that's at the high school. And unfortunately, the Gloucester High School garden had to be paused just due to some of the mitigations around that area and the coastal flooding. But yeah, we were essentially going to look into like, how could we grow food that could then be put into the food locker that then could be taken home to the families? And if O'Malley is on that same track, that's absolutely something that we could look into and pursue. We have a lot of space at O'Malley and a lot of avenues to be able to work with that, yeah.
And it's also just something that I think is like so obvious to work in. So just like the conversations that we have with students around, I mean, it's for years been destigmatizing free lunch and reduced lunch, and then using services like that, and are always things that we can talk about in the class.
Yeah.
Last question for you. How about private growers in the area? Do we leverage those at all? I mean, I'm thinking local farms. Is there any
Oh, yeah,
connection?
we've been working with them for years. We've had lots of those farmers on the board as we were developing for their agricultural knowledge, because who knows better how to grow corn than them. And then Haley works with them directly on.
Cabbage slaw, cabbage from El Prilla, apples are from Russell, pickles Maitland Mountain Farm,
And then we work
spinach from Cedar Rock. the Green Mountain
usually with
Space.
Cedar Rock Gardens, because they also, we used to grow our own seedlings, but realized that they do a way better job. So they provide all the seedlings that we give to our at-home participants, participants and gardeners, community gardens, stuff like that. So we have a really robust partnership with Cedar Rock especially.
Excellent. Great stuff. And I'll spend the remainder of the meeting trying to figure out how to fold this.
If you need help, let me know.
One quick question. So I know that the taste tests, everybody's involved, but the food on the trays, that's only for kids who are getting the school lunch, right? Is there any, are you able to engage sort of the home lunch folks in some of that food taste testing?
Yeah, there's a lot happening at the federal level with school lunch right now, and there's a lot happening throughout the pandemic in terms of like, there was this like kind of open access for kids who are at home to like take parts of the school lunch, which was great in a lot in that kind of way where it'd be like, that would still have absolutely, like they just prep the little lettuce cups and they're off to the side. And knock on wood, that doesn't go away because it's still being contested. The way, and with us talking about like systemic ways of like putting things on the tray. The taste test aspect would still remain like a core part of our programming. And that's not something that like would be replaced by being on trays because exactly of that access point for all kids. But in terms of being, I know that'd be something we'd have to get a little creative about just because it is a big lift of taste tests where it's like, I go to each of the schools. And it's something that we would probably have to get creative around with food service staff.
Yeah, and I think like years ago, we really identified that the main priority for our involvement in the cafeterias, as well as ideally providing those connections to other school districts, because we just have the capacity to do so in those networks, but was the taste tests and providing that excitement and that really communal school-wide experience for all the kids, so that then hopefully they see it at home or they see it on the tray, whether it's us or not, and they're more willing to try it. So we are really predominantly focused on that universal experience for students.
Yeah, that's great. I haven't been able to volunteer unfortunately this year, but before the pandemic, I volunteered at That's Fun Time for a taste test, and I loved how it created a conversation with kiddos at the table. They were talking about what their favorite vegetables were, and I'll never forget this little boy being like, mine's collard greens. And everyone's like, what? What's collard greens? And it was just like really interesting conversation amongst, I think they were like first or second graders about different vegetables and different cultural norms around eating
Yeah.
vegetables. So it was just a very fun experience. to
It's
watch.
something neat at West Parish. We have a wonderful parent lead, and she and I like debrief after taste tests almost, because there's just like so many kids and so much happening. And the really neat thing we've noticed with those kids at that school this year is when we came at them in the fall with apple cabbage salad, it was like, oh, I like it. Oh, I don't like it. Oh, I loved it. Oh, and then when we got around to Green Monster smoothies in May, it was, I really liked the consistency of it, but I don't know if I would have put as much orange juice in it next time. Like, they're talking to me like I am like an adult, and we're like making a Bon Appetit recipe together. But it's great that they have like that knowledge and the language to like understand their own taste, because it's not so much like, I hate that, so I hate anything with spinach in it, or like I didn't like that smoothie and I'm not gonna like any other smoothies ever again. They can differentiate, they have that nuanced take to be more open to trying things again or in different ways or modifying it for themselves so it fits them.
That's always like the real focus, is just try it. They're like, well, I don't know. It's like, I'll just try one bite. Or if you don't want to try it, that's all right. Like, we're never gonna like, force them or shame them into doing anything, or just want it to be an entirely positive thing that you have these opportunities to try these different things.
Exactly, and isn't that great?
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah. Yes, Celeriac, I remember, there were kids who were like, what is this? And then I
Yeah.
remember a second.
And you show it to them cut up and then you bring out the root that's like ugly and horrible and they're like, what
But I
is
remember
this?
kids saying, where can I get this? I love this.
Yeah,
So,
It's cool.
it's pretty neat.
It's very cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having us.
Sorry to see you all.
Sure.
Nice to see everyone.
Yes, nice to see you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thanks.
We will move on to the kindergarten through fifth grade student learning update. Superintendent.
Yeah. Just need to readjust my screen here. See my notes. Just lost my notes. There's a little, there it is. Got it. So I'm going to keep this pretty quick because you have seen and heard from the K through 5 team a number of times this year. And I don't know if you remember all the way back to March, but we had the ELA coaches here. They did a really extensive presentation about our mid-year benchmarks and also the process that we use for data meetings, the curriculum. So it was a lengthy presentation, and they've been here for the pilot information around ELA. So I figured I would keep this just super quick. It's a snapshot of where we ended up the year because you saw them at mid-year. And they're just with the significant caveat that we had a tremendous amount of absenteeism this year, understandably, because of COVID. And it's hard to compare from year to year, but we can take a look within a year, knowing that in part of December, January, and into February was really tough. There were a lot of days missed for both teachers and students. Make sure there is still a little bit of a delay. I don't know why my computer does this, but just shout if it doesn't move forward. So we're going to take a look at English language arts first. It's not an exhaustive study, but I think we're all feeling fairly strongly that we saw some disruption from December, January, and into February. It took quite a while to even assess students. There was a lot of missed time there. But the good news is that though our fall scores were
really pretty low in the fall in some areas. The growth to mid-year and then right on through the end in a number of grade levels was strong. At the time, we talked about recognizing that this year's fifth graders had some really fundamental pieces that were missing, some gaps from spring of third grade and fourth grade. And we really needed to do something we don't typically do, which is spend time going back or remediating on some of those foundational skills. You'll see it show in the data. And the good news is that we really made a lot of growth at fifth grade, which shouldn't, it normally wouldn't have been an area where we would have had to expend energy, but we had to and made some really good progress to make sure that they're set up better for middle school. When we take a look at kindergarten data, sometimes these graphs can be just a little challenging to read, so let me give you a little idea of the colors and what that means. On this slide, you'll see 2021 school year above, 21-22 below, and this is kindergarten. The fall benchmark, the middle, that would be January, early February, and then the spring benchmark, which was not long ago. And we have 4 categories in DIBELS. One is intensive support. That requires a second dose of foundations, interventions. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes into the groups that are identified as needing intensive support. We may get many of the same practices, but less intensively for in yellow, what is strategic support, and core really solid. So the way technically it's core support in blue as what they describe as negligible risk. There's almost no risk that the student is going to lose ground. They're well on track. They're very, very strong. And core support is they're doing great. We just need to keep an eye on it. That's all. So those 2 categories, the sort of bright green and the blue, are what we would consider meeting or exceeding benchmarks in the other language that we typically use for Uncast or Star 360. So every time you see the green and the blue, we kind of pull that together into the meeting or exceeding. If you'll notice that our kindergartners this year came in with even more challenges than the year before. So at the beginning of the year, 54% of kindergartners, 129 students came in needing intensive support. And the really good news is that 54% number by the end of the year, even at midpoint, and we're still trying to gain ground to 32 and then all the way to 18. And the combined core categories to 71% by the end of the year, from 29% at the beginning of the year. So that was pretty extraordinary to make those kinds of gains while also battling lots of absenteeism. So I think the good news, if we had just even remained even this year with a lot of the absenteeism, we would have been doing okay, but they really made fantastic gains. They're something to be really proud of.
Yes, quick question about that. So this is a remarkable difference to the previous years. We're seeing the trends in this data, like that's not like typical saying, from beginning, middle to end, that there's a lot of catching up to do, per se. I mean, that's not normal.
What we're seeing is the last 2 years, we've seen kindergarten students come in needing more support. So the starting place.
Yeah. So that's atypical from previous years.
Yeah. But the good news is the results have been through lots of hard work and have been really solid.
Can I just ask one quick question about, was the absenteeism worse last year or this year?
This year.
This year
by far.
Oh, interesting, okay.
We had, it was far enough.
Okay.
We had a huge spike in January.
Yeah.
December,
I kind of
January,
figured that, but I
well
was just
into
sort of looking
February.
at this data, and it kind of reflects that a little bit.
And then we can't forget, we then hit normal cold and flu season came in March and April.
Won't do the math.
So we
Won't do the
lost a lot to that too.
Saying was all about that.
Yeah.
No,
so- Yeah, so there was a lot going on. And despite that, they really made great great gains. Again, grade 1, I think the real takeaway here is grade 1, K and 1, had a lot of work to do and were quite successful. So grade 1 moved from 46% in sort of meeting, exceeding, or in the green and blue, up to 73% by the end of the year. And let's start moving. Yep.
Greg, do you anticipate as things kind of hopefully settle down a little bit this coming year, that those green and blues will look even better in 2022, 23?
Yeah, there's been a lot of hard work, and if we could see relatively uninterrupted year, yeah, I would expect those to improve for sure. Grade 2, again, you'll see this progression through the years as they are showing the more years of instruction. Typically, the beginning of the year is a better starting place than it is for K1. That's a little bit different when we get to the upper grades. We've noted the 5th grade challenges. So second grade ended the year really strongly, 73% in green and blue. Grade 3, 74% in green and blue. So we're really looking good by the end of the year. Grade 3 looked pretty decent throughout the year, and just continued those gains.
Can I just ask you one question, Greg?
Excuse me?
Can I just ask you one question? Oh, I should ask Kathy.
Fine.
Okay, I remember when there was something about the end of 2nd grade, how that was a sort of particularly important
Yeah.
moment for foundational skills for 3rd grade. Am I remembering correctly?
Yep.
So, and I know that was extremely challenging for the kids where school had shut
Yep.
in their 2nd grade. Do you feel like well, I guess that's the 5th graders, or it's the 4th graders and the 5th graders, so we'll see. But I'm just wondering if we've been able to rebuild.
Yeah, to some degree. I think it shows in math, particularly because they missed those formative years with all the manipulatives.
Right.
And they also missed it last year with the manipulatives. So that we were able to really hit literacy hard last year and this year.
Okay, so we'll see.
The math manipulatives that really played a role, I think, for last year as well. So we're going to see a little bit
Okay.
longer dip probably there.
Right. Okay.
So grade 3 also looking strong. Grade 4, that was not bad. Stayed a little bit flat in overall, but I think one of the things to note is that from the beginning of the year, if you look at the bottom left, there were a lot of students in the sort of lower end of core, and by the end of the year, 43%. The overall, the total number stayed about the same percentage, 65, 64%. The number of students who moved from the lower end of that core support moved up into the upper. So 25 students moved into the blue category. So I'm not quite sure why there were still some students who, throughout the year required intensive strategic support. Could be impacted by absenteeism. We haven't had a real chance to focus hard on that data. There's also, we know generally that attendance played a big part, and maybe we don't need to really explore it deeply, but to set our sights on an uninterrupted year next year and keep going. 5th grade, as I noted, by the end of the year, we are looking at 69% of students who were in the green and the blue. And if you look at the blue is pretty strong in 5th grade. And this was an area of real focus because we knew that we wanted to strengthen their skills before they went to middle school. If we take a look at STAR 360 data, you've heard quite a bit about STAR 360 over the last 2 years. So these ones speak for themselves. They're a little bit easier to interpret. What we want to see would be exactly like this slide, where you're climbing up on the left, which means in the fall, 40%, then 55 at mid-year, 58%. We want to see it climbing on the left-hand side. And then on the other two categories, that's where we want to see the staircase going down. And if it's going down the way it's going down on the far right, not meeting and partially meeting, that's exactly the pattern we'd like to see across the board. That means, remember, with STAR 360, it is progressively harder. It's not the same questions. Some benchmarks in the old days would be same at the beginning, same at the end. It's very easy to see how they're performing, but based on that sort of what they would have expected to do in the fall, which you wouldn't expect them to know all of those things. So this one is a truly adaptive, and so it gets increasingly more challenging relative to the time period of the year. So it's not uncommon to see something, you could be up here and stay flat across. That still means students are progressing. They're progressing within the same band. Climbing is even better. And that's what we see at grade 2. Not sure why that didn't move forward. Doesn't move forward. Give it a moment. Grade 3, similar, 49% at the beginning of the year, 57 by the end of the year, and overall mostly a drop in partially and not meeting, though still a little bit flat and then not meeting. Sure why this is. Grade 4, it's very much like grade 2. That's the kind of progression we want to see. Now, what I will say is, those who are looking closely at this will notice that grade 2 was climbing up, but we were up in the 60s. Grade 4 is climbing up, still making really good progress, but at a lower final point. I will remind you that these are relative to state standards, which I think I showed you at mid-year. I could show you the same slide on the national standards, and this would be in the 80s. We're using the much, much tougher Massachusetts standards. And you know, we have a feeling that at 4th and 5th grade, the cumulative impact not only of the pandemic, but also, if we recall, the basis for the work that we've been doing with the pilot for ELA was a recognition that at our upper grades and into middle school, that there were components of vocabulary and comprehension that were really beginning to show that we have really strong foundational skills, that we were seeing some weaknesses, and we wanted to get ahead of those. And so that also may be why a little bit lower as we go to the higher grades. Take a look at grade 5. A little bit flat there, but again, remember that the test is getting harder. Coaches also wanted to pass on, and we'll have to think about this for scheduling, is that there are 3 Uncast tests for 5th grade, end of year benchmarks, and all kinds of stuff sort of packed in to the end of the year. Also slightly delayed by some of the absenteeism. And so there was a lot of testing that fell at the end of this year. And I'm not sure if there may be a little test fatigue that's happening, but that's something that we would love to look into. What are the ways that we can slim our assessments down or space them? We're constantly battling the calendar for space, but we'll continue to look more closely at that. Great. So looking at math, surprisingly strong and continuous growth in K and 1, steady growth at all grade levels. And some evidence of, again, the January-February disruption. And then, much the same impact of staff and student absenteeism. Okay, this is kindergarten, early numeracy. This is really great. That was fairly low starting point. To get to 79% by the end of this year in a challenging year, is fantastic. Take a look at grade 1. Also strong, you'll see that though between March and end of year, again, though there may not have been a climb there, you'll notice that the not meeting dropped significantly down from 25% all the way down to 12%. Grade 1 math, that's the kind of, this is again STAR, and this is the adaptive one. So these are getting harder. This assessment gets harder as they get to the end of the year. Very similar to what we saw in ELA. K and 1 are really rocking. They're doing really well. Grade 2, strong across the year. Not quite as same kind of percentage gains, but still very strong, well up there. Grade 3 made good progress, 48 up to 55%. So we've got grade K 1, 2, and 3 all in the 50s to 60. Grade 4, then again, this is a grade level that was in, has had second and third grade be challenging years, manipulatives from the end of second, all of third. So they started really relatively low, but this is exactly the kind of profile. So really fantastic games throughout the year. And fifth grade, less sort of stunning as the rest of the grade levels in fourth grade, but still progress from 34 to 40%.
When you say that testing gets harder in fifth grade, what does that mean?
It's
In
harder.
a nutshell.
Well, I think I mentioned the adaptive piece, so that the actual test itself, within the year, when students sit for the test in September, they're not exposed to the same kinds of questions. Those scale up as they move through the year based on where you would expect, what kinds of things they would have been expected to learn, the complexity of those things. So in fifth grade, unlike in the old days when we gave the exact same assessment at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, and of course you're going to see pretty remarkable growth because you don't expect them to know it. It is scaling and giving them increasingly more complex multi-step questions, multi-part questions, concepts that aren't covered till later in the year. So it gets harder as they go. So if we're continuing to see percentage changes, that's an extra good sign.
It's not just fifth grade, right? It's all grades.
It's all, actually all
Start-
grades.
Start
have
360.
that In Start 360.
Yeah, I've read up on stuff.
Yeah.
As a follow-up, sorry,
That's okay.
just as kind of a follow-up, I remember when Lynn B was here, we talked about test fatigue a little bit, like middle schools were getting tested all the
Yeah.
time. It ended up being like, it's not a full day test, it might be a block.
Yeah.
It's like 13 blocks of testing. I mean, just in general, do you feel like is there another way to kind of limit the testing, or is it just simply needed to be, doesn't need to be done?
I feel, yes, I think it's a lot, but we adopted Start 360 because it's a shorter assessment window. So we're actually, a shorter assessment time period. So we've kind of cut what we used to do almost in half for Start 360. The other thing I would say is that, the DIBELS assessment doesn't take too long, and it's the kind of data we need to make the adjustments, but also to provide the interventions and support. If this were 15 years ago, where we were testing for the sake of providing a number for the district or a sort of overall indicator, I'd be right there with you and say, if we're just providing it to demonstrate that, you know, we're doing our job, then I would want to really minimize that. The assessments that they're using right now, these two key assessments, are absolutely guiding instruction, interventions, and so I think they're absolutely essential. For fifth grade, and that's the only grade where I think we've got a little bit of a traffic jam in the spring, is because we're also throwing math, science, and ELA MCAS on top of it. So that, I think, is where, if I look across the schools, that's the place where it's the only one I'm actually talking about for some of the test fatigue might get fifth grade.
Yeah.
In the spring of my fifth grade year, when it's sunny out and I'm now on my third MCAS plus these benchmarks, that could be getting to be a little challenging. But I don't really, I think across all of our other grade levels, we've narrowed it down to the kinds of assessments we use to impact interventions and instruction.
Yeah.
So I think it's important.
Yeah. And I think one more just comment on it is that I think my perception of testing, like I was always a bad tester. I didn't test well. I was an average student and a bad tester, which is a bad combination. But the motives behind testing or the reason for testing now, I think, is different, and it just looks different to me. I'm less scared. I guess what I should say is I'm less scared. If I was a student now, I'd be less scared about testing than I was when I was a fifth grader.
I think it's because I can see the direct benefit attached to the assessments, right?
That's what I'm looking to say.
And it really makes a big difference.
Yeah. Thank you.
So given the challenges of the fifth grade, now the incoming sixth grade class, I'm sure in your wisdom and in Lynn's wisdom, there are supports that are going to be built in middle school. I guess my question is, since middle school is such a place for work, work that needs to be done at the middle school, how do you, how do you sort of understand that this fifth grade class has certain challenges and do that in the midst of sort of all the work that is being done at O'Malley, sort of in general? Like, I guess I'm questioning how we focus on these students and get them what they need while we're also, working to do that for all of O'Malley.
Yeah, well, I think I would say that the fourth and fifth grade have benefited from really intensive support, extra intensive support at the elementary school. So as I mentioned, the focus on foundational skills wouldn't necessarily have happened so much at the higher grade. So they've been getting it to make sure that they're getting back there in order to move into middle school. So I think a lot of the work has been done to try to offset the kinds of challenges that you're talking about. That doesn't mean that they're going to be immune from the impact that the last couple of years has caused. And that's why it's heartening to see that the middle school is not only using same assessments now, first time in a long time, they're also using the same assessment suite for ELA and math. So now they have access to the same data, same assessments, right through the grade. So that's one big plus. The communication with the coaches, both math and literacy, has improved dramatically. The work that they've been doing at the middle school to hold really productive data meetings, to tailor interventions, that's been happening at the middle school. So these are things that have been, despite the challenges of the last 2 years, have been developing right in line with being responsive to student needs. So I have little doubt that not only the data, but also the practice and interventions are in full swing at the middle school.
Can I just
Also, can I just add, Principal Beeman mentioned, Principal Beeman mentioned that the literacy intervention, in identifying specific students who need that support. That's part of the work on this, is to build on what Greg said. And then also, we have a math interventionist who will be hired for next year. Meant to hire someone for this year, but couldn't fill the position, but do expect to fill it for next year. Maybe already have filled it. So that's another, and that's ESSER funded,
Right.
you know, and so that's another, sort of, speaking directly to seeing the need, knowing the needs coming.
And we added the Maura Donahue position. They've been doing great work on the curriculum reviews and the data meetings and the intervention. So that's all, it's all the right tools and mechanisms in place.
Have other, just I'll follow up just to get a sense of longitudinally. I mean, so but there's less than 50% of this fifth grade meeting or exceeding expectations, right? Fewer, I guess is how you would say it. Has that been the case? I mean, in previous years, has that been similar?
Well, remember, it's been 2 years on Star 360,
Okay,
so
right, so there's
we had an assessment shift.
Right. Okay.
So it's hard.
Hard to-
We now are going to be going into our third year for the longitudinal data, so we'll be able to answer those questions. But yeah, it's hard to do that right now.
We definitely we need to see that improve.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. That's 50% not meeting expectations.
And at the same period of time, we also had huge disruptions to Uncast too. So some of the things we might have looked at in Uncast also have been challenged the last few years.
Can I just ask that question sort of in a different way?
Yeah.
So when you decided to sort of go back to remedial skills for the fifth grade, was that based on the fall benchmark data, or was that based on the spring benchmark data?
That was planned in advance based on how the students finished the year prior.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe what Laura is saying is like, do we feel like we already need to have that plan in place for them to go into O'Malley because of where they scored fairly lower in?
Yeah, and I think that O'Malley is doing it. They've been looking at the same data, and they've been planning for the kind of staffing and approaches needed. So
We
Yeah.
feel prepared for wherever they show up.
Yeah.
And if they score particularly low on fall benchmark data, then maybe we need to sort of like regroup again.
I think probably not fall. I would look at the mid-year.
Yeah.
and see what kind of gains they make.
Can I just ask one more thing related to that? And then summer learning loss.
Yeah.
Is that something that impacts this age group as well?
Big-
Big
Well,
time?
we've had big changes there over the last 2 years. We've had, the pretty robust summer learning programs that have not been in place in the past.
Right.
So yeah, that certainly impacts students, and at the elementary school, the students who need that most support are the ones who've been, the outreach has happened for, the invitation and more support. So there's a lot of work there, and then the school, of course, has also done that, put in place some pretty successful summer programs as well. So these are all again in response to where we've been the last year or two.
And I've heard so much good feedback from parents, just so grateful that their kids are going to the summer program.
Yeah.
They're just really, really grateful to have that opportunity, to have their kids go, and they recognize the need. So I think we're gonna.
Yes, the middle school has been doing great work putting together, as always, with O'Malley Academy, but also increasing the kind of work they do there. And they really led the way on doing the after school and the summer work for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
And the elementary has picked that up as well. And a little shout out to Amy Natola and the group of teachers who are training this week and preparing to greet math and ELA students coming up very, very soon. I've done a lot of work, and a partnership with Y this year is also another great partnership. Transportation, everybody pulling together to make it work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. The next item of business is the superintendent's evaluation. I want to thank everyone for doing a very thoughtful and thorough job with the evaluations. I think the comments were really insightful and backed up by the knowledge we have and the presentations and everything we've been given throughout this year. I think more than ever, I feel like there's so much going on, but we have such a great understanding of everything that's going on. So I think that came through in a lot of the comments, that people feel really up to date and knowledgeable about how you have to do your job, but supported also by Greg. So even though this is his evaluation, I think we all know you are right there every step of the way on all the instructional stuff. So thank you for that. So I'm going to do this in a similar fashion as Jonathan has done this in the past. So I created a consolidated summative evaluation report, rolling up all the scores from everybody that completed. We have 6 people that completed and chose not to complete it, which we gave everybody the option, given how short you've been on the committee. So the first section is the assess project progress towards goals, and the categories are of grading or did not meet, some progress, significant progress, met or exceeded. And so the professional practice goals, all 6 evaluations said that it was met. The student learning goals, we have 1 with significant progress, 4 with met, and 1 with exceeded. District improvement goals, of which there were 3, 1 significant progress, 5 met, and 5 met. And the goals did not have an area for any comments or anything. So those were just assessing based upon those goals. And we always try to set goals that are achievable and realistic. So so it's great that those things have been met. Okay, the next item is the assessments of performance on standards. And I guess for the public, the Department of Education has always stressed that proficient is a very, very high bar. It's not just you're okay, it really is, you are doing everything that's expected of you at a significantly high level. And this is the same scale that our teachers are assessed on. Proficient is a very high bar, and exemplary is like, oh God. So so there, and and some things just take time to get to that exemplary when you start seeing more outcomes. So in terms of instructional leadership, we have 5 people that scored the superintendent proficient, and 1 that scored the superintendent exemplary. Management and operations, we have 1 that scored in proficient and 5 that scored exemplary. Family and community engagement, we have 4 that scored proficient and 2 that scored exemplary. And professional culture, 6 that scored proficient. And so I'm going to read just some excerpts from some of the comments that were made, and the superintendent does have everybody's evaluation, so he's got all the narratives of all the comments that were made. So some of the comments, without attribution to who wrote them, is having worked with Ben during these past 2 years, I am confident in his abilities to lead us forward, his capacity for listening to other viewpoints, his thoughtful guidance in helping choose 2 or 3 things to focus on and not be distracted by shiny objects, and his humility and understanding that educating and caring for our students is a team effort. I am eager to see instructional improvements, and I am completely confident in Ben and the staff he leads to move us in that direction. Another comment is, my hope is that our district can continue its current trajectory, as I have full confidence in the superintendent Lummis's ability to create a higher quality school system for our students. Another comment, much of the school year, our district has engaged in many levels of COVID-19 testing, piloting new curriculums, hiring for critical roles across the district, developing and implementing a naming process for the new school community, designing and launching a new website, managing new funding streams related to pandemic relief, collective bargaining, legal challenges, just to name a few. Clearly, Mr. Lummis did not manage to effectively juggle all these moving pieces alone, but a good leader is able to delegate, empower administrators to make adjustments as necessary, communicate priorities with their team, assess areas of need, and hire effectively to fill gaps. Mr. Lummis has managed to show true leadership in a very challenging year, as evidenced by the ongoing success in the initiatives. Another comment. Ben Lummis has developed excellent insight into the needs of our school district. His leadership continued to impress me, knowing he is at the beginning of a superintendent career. Gloucester is fortunate to have a leader who sees most of what's going on and does not pass judgment. Instead, he immerses himself into the issues with eyes wide open, learns and then responds with care and compassion. I have full confidence that Ben Lummis will continue to grow into his profession, and that we are being led to great outcomes in improving teaching and learning in Gloucester schools. Last one. It is noticeable that Superintendent Lummis has been a full-time superintendent for only 2 years, with an interim role before that. He performs all facets of his job responsibilities at a level that one would expect with much more experience. Mr. Superintendent Lummis is at his core a remarkable instructional leader who provides information in organized and understandable presentations. The district's plan for ongoing improvement outlines comprehensive short and long-term planning in almost every facet of instruction at all levels, most notably the evaluation and selection of new K-5 ELA curriculum, laying the groundwork for the process of selecting ELA curriculum for grades 6 through 8, beginning the process for grades 6 through 8 math, and many initiatives on instructional practice at the high school level and a strong professional development program.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
The very first sentence, instead of noticeable, it is notable.
Did I say noticeable?
Yeah, it reads significantly differently.
Notable.
Noticeable.
So in terms of a summative, all 6 of us graded the superintendent overall as 6 as proficient. Okay, and then we'll get into, if anybody wants to kind of jazz us up with music or whatever.
I'm happy to read something if you get tired, but.
The next standard, so the Department of Ed has these standards, and then there's different indicators underneath. And I guess I'll go through the indicators as well, or no? No, this is in the packet. This will be in the packet. This will be in the packet. So all the pieces that lead to the overall rating are in the packet, or will be in the packet as soon as we discuss tonight. And if there's anything we want to add or adjust, we can do that, and then Stephanie will incorporate it into the packet that goes on the website. So instructional leadership. The education leader promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by cultivating a shared vision that makes powerful teaching and learning the central focus of schooling. And all 6 of us graded as proficient. And some excerpts are: Superintendent Lummis creates and encourages educators in our district to look for new streamlined ways to not only teach, but also find effective methods to deliver educational content. I appreciate his let's take it slow approach to implementing new and improved methods and trying not to take on too much at once. Another comment is Ben Lummis takes a positive, enthusiastic approach to instructional leadership. Research-based, student-centered instruction is anticipated when he engages with administrators and staff, and as he works directly with leadership teams communicating his expectations. He is unifying his staff in the school district with a hands-on approach to student progress, promoting a climate for high-impact student engagement and student achievement. Next comment, Mr. Lummis asked that O'Malley present mid and end of year learning outcomes to the school committee, which has not been done in the past. This level of accountability shows a commitment to improving outcomes. Additionally, the process to complete the district-wide plan for ongoing improvement has been inclusive and transparent. Another comment, Ben has led our district to continue improving our curriculum and the quality of our instruction for all learners while giving staff more opportunities to learn and grow through professional learning communities and professional development. We certainly have more work to do to achieve our student learning goals, but with Ben's leadership, we're continuing to build a very strong foundation. I think feel free to type in. You're good? Okay.
Nothing to add here.
All right, and the next standard is management and operations. The education leader promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by ensuring a safe and efficient and effective learning environment, using resources to implement appropriate curriculum, staffing, and scheduling. And in this category, we have 2 that rated proficient and 3 that rated, 4 that rated exemplary. Some comments. Ben Lummis excels in the day-to-day management and operations of Gloucester Public Schools. Within the past 2 years, he quickly revealed a strong talent for engaging and communicating the needs of teaching and learning in his management of the district. He excels in his preparedness and engagement in collective bargaining practices and is sound in his judgment to the laws and regulations that govern our school. Next comment, I gave Ben an exemplary for his fiscal work for the way he manages our budgeting process, tying it at every layer to the needs of our district. Through this months-long process, he learns, and then we, the school committee, learn what the needs are before looking at the fiscal requirements to pay for them. Another comment, Superintendent Lummis's budget presentations truly tell the story of key educational priorities, the challenges and the goals of what is articulated in the fiscal year budget. Next comment, getting through these past 2 years has required a keen ability to understand and execute ever-changing protocols and plans. Mr. Lummis has demonstrated just that, an ability to digest and clearly communicate protocols and his recommendations in a clear and concise way. The third standard is family and community engagement. And the description is the education leader promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff through effective partnerships with families, community organizations, and other stakeholders that support the mission of the district and its schools. And all 6 gave the superintendent an overall score of proficient. Comments? My hope is that with the focus on welcoming newcomers to the district, EL families, et cetera, GPS can continue to increase engagement with more of our diverse stakeholders. Another comment, with excellent communication skills, his correspondence to families are appropriate, time-sensitive, and informative on a variety of topics. Another one, I find Superintendent Lummis' performance and well-thought-out plans for increasing effectiveness in this area will continue to make great progress on the family-school community partnership for our students. Last comment, I would like to see Superintendent Lummis continue to try to find ways to bridge the gap between parents in our schools and school administration. It is a tall order, but one I feel strongly about. Our school's strength lies in part with family engagement, and anything we can do to strengthen that bond would be helpful. Okay, and the last standard is professional culture. The education leader promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by nurturing and sustaining a district-wide culture of reflective practice, high expectations, and continuous learning for staff. And all 6 graded proficient. Some of the comments. Mr. Lummis has shown a consistent effort to collaborate with staff and empower the leadership team to share responsibility for leading team meetings that promote conversations around a commitment to shared goals and values with an eye towards high expectations for achievement in all areas. Ben Lummis displays a strong sense of welcoming and inclusion to all in our community. He understands the value of and is committed to maintaining professional culture at Gloucester Public Schools. Ben Lummis's behavior is a model of professionalism with sincere respect and commitment to GPS students and staff. Next one, in presentations to the school committee on learning and professional practice, it is clear that Superintendent Lummis has high expectations for all so that every student excels and needs are met. The plan for ongoing improvement reinforces a culture of reflective practice and the importance of data and best practices to improve outcomes. Next comment, I appreciate Superintendent Lummis's ability to maintain a professional culture and maintain a high standard for all involved in our schools. He is also an outstanding, capital letters, communicator at all levels and is someone that people want to follow. Next comment is, last comment. From the beginning, I've been impressed with Ben's ability to forge consensus and work constructively and respectfully with educators, staff, city agencies, and the school committee. This has been even more noticeable during his second full year as second full school year of COVID, during which guidelines shifted, needs evolved, and staff worked continuously to meet the changing needs of their students. He continually encourages and engages staff in professional development opportunities, led by the Inimitable, which I never can pronounce right, Greg Bach, the GPS plan for ongoing improvement, leadership team meetings, and generally by showcasing their work and commending their accomplishments to the school committee and others. I'm particularly gratified that GPS continues to build its cultural proficiency by training teachers in culturally responsive teaching techniques, an area of critical importance at this time. Ben is committed to high standards for himself and all Gloucester Public School staff. So that's the a little bit of what the comments were made, but I tried to capture different things that were said. And I will say that superintendent's job is enormous with many, many things. You have to be good at so many things. And I know in my review, I commented about his ability and his grasp and real true tough performance. So feel free to add in, so this will be part of the record. This will be the record, but also comments will get added to this in the minutes from Maria. So if you want to say anything. We'll start with the mayor.
Well, I think I first met you, it's less than a year, I was running for mayor, so it's definitely less than a year ago, maybe last July or August. And then I've only worked with you for 6.5 months. But I'm pretty impressed. I mean, I've dropped into a whole new world myself. It's been very helpful having you at the helm to sort of lead me through on the school side. And from a budgeting perspective, very appreciative of the budget you put forward that was with the guidelines the previous administration put on for you. And I think we'll have a very effective school year with that budget and with you leading us. And I think this committee's done a really good job keeping this guy in line.
Thank you, Mayor. It takes a village. Very much appreciate that.
I'm really grateful that I'm grateful to have been part of the hiring process and that we found Ben when we did, and that you joined our district. It's such a difficult moment during that first summer of COVID. And I feel I just have so much respect for the work you've done in these 2 years and how you've taken the time to sort of learn our people and our place in the midst of a very, challenging time. And I am really confident in your ability to continue to move us forward and to increase our capacity to really engage our students in learning and also with a focus on their social and emotional needs. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
First of all, if you follow me on Facebook, you know I'm big on capital letters, so you kind of gave me away there. Yeah. Secondly, and I've said this to Ben, so it's no big deal. When I first met him, I was on the subcommittee that helped kind of vet out the 20-something candidates or so. Out of the 7 finalists, I think, and I've said this to Ben, I had him ranked 7th. So that tells you that maybe I shouldn't even be on the school committee. But
I've forgotten actually, but thanks.
Having said all that, I don't think, I'm not easily impressed. I've been around, I've seen plenty of managers, I've seen plenty of people that are in leadership positions. I don't think I could be any more impressed with the job that he's done and what he brings to the table every day. When people ask me, how's my experience been on the school committee? I said, well, a couple of things. One is I have complete confidence that people are invested in the public schools here in Gloucester. People care about the public schools, and we have a plan, and we're led by a guy that knows what he's doing. The other thing is, recently I've gone back and kind of looked at. I went back and found something on Ben. I think Ben ran for school committee at one point in his illustrious career. So back in 2003, there was an interview with him, and I went back and I read that. And he's the same guy he was in 2003 as he is today. And that's impressive to me. So long story short, I don't think I could be any more impressed, and I'm very thankful and grateful that it's part of the Gloucester Public Schools. So
Thank you. Let's not share that video, okay?
there's a headshot, and let me say this, I'll pass it along.
Thank you.
I'll just ask not for that to happen, okay.
So I would second everything that everyone said. I just want to add that the past 2.5 years have not been easy, right? Like, we have had really difficult conversations on this committee. We have had very long nights on this committee. And somehow through it all, we have remained a really solid group, and we've stayed really consistent in our approach. And there's been some humor along the way, and I really think that we owe a lot to you in relation to that, because you really guide those really tough conversations and set us up for success in those conversations. And we all have very different personalities and strong personalities and different approaches, and we, you know, this committee has functioned really well over the last 2.5 years. And so I'm just really appreciative of your leadership along the way.
Thank you, Ursula. I appreciate that.
First, thanks. You know, coming into the school committee relatively recently, of course, it was great getting to know you over these past few months. What impressed me before I was on the committee was, you know, having kids in the system and, you know, knowing how you led the response to such a difficult time being thrown in the fire. I mean, and it gives me a lot of confidence that anything that happens in the future, I know we're in good hands. And, you know, I really appreciate your judgment and you know, you provided a model for other school systems. It's been lauded by the state itself, and that's remarkable. The other things that I like you personally, and I think that's great. You know, you bring a little levity every now and then at appropriate times, and you know, at times of you know, difficult times, you know, your tact is appropriate, and you know, I appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you much.
I don't think I did any comments about your ability to form and continue to grow with a really great leadership team. And there are a lot of people that do their job really well, but they don't necessarily know how to organize or motivate or inspire. And I just see your presence in, you know, just reflected in all the people that come before us. Clearly, you know, Greg was doing awesome before he came, but he's definitely, you know, continued to flourish under you. And, you know, all the principals when they come, and special education director, it really is very clear that there is a mutual respect, just real high level thinking and work being done in times where it probably would be easy to say, we can't do it this year. You know, I mean, it's just for the past, since you've been hired, I mean, I know we hired, you would never have been 7th on my list if I had done a search committee, because not only was your passion very clear for Gloucester, even though you did not live here, the potential in you and what values you have. And I just get choked up every time I see you communicate in such a genuine way with families and staff. I think that goes a long.
Appreciate that.
All right. Yes.
This is unusual. I haven't said anything, I don't think, ever before in these reviews. Do you mind, since you've mentioned my name a couple of times? I'll keep it super quick. My grandmother was a nut. She had all kinds of funny sayings. And one of the things she always used to say was, you're gonna be in the soup if you do that. You're gonna be in the soup. That guy did this and he was in the soup. She always was talking about in the soup. I never understood what it meant until later on. I realized that's when you're in real trouble, because you're in the soup. So we would have been in the soup if Ben had been selected. No question about it. We would have been in the soup, and in a bad way, because that was a really, really rough time. I can't imagine anybody else stepping into it when he did, and being able to pull people together and then just operate at that high level of energy and commitment, nonstop, unchanged since the day he stepped in the door. I've never seen anybody burn the candle both ends like that for the amount of time that he has. So everything that you see here is everything that is happening behind the scenes. So there's just nothing hidden. It's as you see it. So it's just extraordinary.
Thank you.
The thing I meant to mention though, you know, on top of everything that was going on with the health crisis, it's impressive to like finally be on the committee, and then knowing that you know, you didn't lose track of the goals we had. You know, we were still moving the ball, developing the education of our students and the professionalism of our teachers. And you know, a big reason why I wanted to join the committee was from my past being a student, knowing that Gloucester's reputation as an educational system wasn't the best in the area. But I'm really impressed at all the work that you've done to change that perspective. And, not losing that in the midst of all that chaos that happened the past couple of years.
Thank you, Keith. I want to first thank Greg and Bach for saying his comments. Greg, that what you have said means a tremendous amount coming from you.
My grandmother would be happy.
That just means a lot. I appreciate everything. You've seen so much and been in this field for so long, and that's really. And then, well, first of all, thank you everyone for your comments and your support. It's been a long two years, as you all know, and it's been exhausting for all of us, for me too. I'm looking forward to some time off, and I think we're all looking for a very calm July. I'm working on it. But I think I said this last year, and it's true again this year. It's pretty extraordinary to folks to sort of pay witness to what you're trying to accomplish and say it back to you. And I think it's a rare experience in life, and it's something that you've given me that gift of I see what I'm trying to do and see what's important to me and the way I work, and then acknowledge that and praise that. So thank you very much for each of you. It has been a remarkable 2 years. One thing is I can't think I'm going to say this. It's been a lot of fun at times, or at a lot of times. And the reason that is because I work with so many great people. We have a great team at all levels. Whether it's working with Greg day in, day out, the committee, as you folks know and see, committees aren't always easy or wonderful or a joy to work with. You folks make it easy by working with each other, by listening, by asking good questions, by really caring a lot and being very invested, and being invested in the kids and the families. And that's noticeable to me and different than many places. So that's one thing. But that's at the end, when I talk about the team, it's really so many folks. I had lunch yesterday with their transportation team, with their bus drivers and monitors, and I say that because just take the time to listen to those folks, and not only what's going on with their work, but also what's going on, learning from one of our bus monitors, Tony, about Fiesta, my first Fiesta was coming up. He had a lot of good advice, especially about the boat races, because his daughter's been racing for 14 years and has a great team. Okay, so I'll have to see tomorrow or Sunday maybe. Anyway, Saturday. And then also folks like Amy Clayton from Veterans, who also is helping me with Fiesta by giving me a very detailed background on it, and then also and also Medley showing you about the hat ladies, the crazy hat ladies.
Yeah.
But it's just those moments when I'm meeting people, talking to people, getting to know them, getting to know me, and then at the same time know that they care so much about their work, and their work, of course, is our kids. So it's a real joy. I'm hoping for an easier year next year. I think we all are. I would really enjoy that. But it's been great to be here. I'm lucky to have landed here, and really appreciate that so many folks have really embraced what we're trying to do. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will point out, this is probably the only position that has a review in this public setting. So I think, as an example, we should ask if there's somebody who reviews our mayor. Who would give you some comments, not us, whoever does that.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years we get. So true. Very publicly, very publicly. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So Melissa could not be here tonight. Next item of business is the Building and Finance Subcommittee report from June 15th, 2022. Oh, you can do this. You want to give, Ben, would you want to, we got an update on O'Malley windows and doors.
Yep.
We got an update on the Beeman and Plum Cove modulars.
We give a few details, and Gary might be on too. And I also ask Gary to chime in terms of O'Malley windows and doors. So we are prepared to submit on the 27th to the MSBA sort of the product budget, and the product budget looks like it's going to come in higher than than the initial estimates looked at. As I think in the $6 million range, so more than the 4.5 we are anticipating. We expect the outlay after reimbursement to be about $2.8 million from the city. It needs to pay that portion, okay? Gary, if you can pull up if you're there, can pull up the budget presentation for BNF. Just make sure I'm saying the numbers right. I don't want to get them wrong, but I do believe that 2.8 is what we anticipate will be the city's share.
Yeah, the 2.8 million is the correct number.
Great, thank you. That's a little bit higher. We thought maybe it might be in the 2.2 to 2.25 range earlier. And before that, we thought it would be even higher than the 6. So, and those changes are simply as they got into the more detailed cost estimation, and then anticipating a fairly large number on contingency because of the uncertainty around supplies and materials and costs related to those. But we are aiming for a next summer to be doing that work. And another piece on that is in the other, I mean, when you're doing an MSBA project like the entire new school, that's a process that is signed off at many levels, superintendent, school committee, and city council. In this one, the accelerated project, it's just signed off by the superintendent. Our OPM, our project manager left field is working closely with us to understand the dollars and cents of it. Another piece on that budget is it's sort of in some ways a conservative estimate because they don't want to estimate too low because this sets the budget for the whole project. So if they really get a fine line with very few contingencies, it's potential to go over budget, and we can't in a sense because there's no that the budget's set just like it had been with the EGS vets after feasibility as well. So, that's one piece. Beeman and Plum Cove modulars, the work we're on site today to start that work. Teachers and staff packed up parts of their rooms. As I gave an update that there's a lot of envelope work, so work on the exteriors, a number of exterior walls, the framing underneath, as well as making it more secure from pests and rodents on the outside skirting, replacing the ramps, outside stairways, and also redoing the roofs as well. This year they will do some of the venting and fans in the above the ceilings because that'll reduce any moisture collection sort of thing. Next summer they'll do the HVAC systems themselves, the rooftop units. They can't get those in time to do it this year, so that's what will be completed next year. When they finish the work at Beeman, then they'll also pave the exterior sort of courtyard play area as well. A pretty extensive job paving that because it's sort of been torn up over the years basically. That's the modulars. What else do we cover? We'll talk about budget in a moment.
We talked about the building use policy and procedures. So we're continuing to make significant progress on that. We'll talk about it again at our next BNF meeting.
Review the fee schedule.
Review the fee schedule and just trying to figure out the categories of how organizations would fall. Discussion of what youth organization, like a nonprofit or a youth nonprofit, how we want to treat them, because historically we have not been charging fees to some groups depending on how they use our buildings and things like that. And we've been charging kind of a nominal fee for some others that use it more regularly. So we just want to make sure we're good community partners and that the fee structure reflects that, but also it is updated to reflect the reality of what other districts are charging for other people that use the facilities.
May want to discuss, we talked about not doing this in July, but if we could bring the next, the final version to school committee August 3rd. Looking at the push, just in terms of schedules, but much better to bring it that night than August 24th. The second meeting. So we can talk about schedule, with you and Melissa in terms of being that, but I might want to go for that. That we have in place for the school. And I think the other piece is just the go through, these are the actions. So you can go to BNF approve the recommend the final budget to the full school committee, and then transfer $91,000. Gary, can you, or how do you want to?
Yeah, I can talk through it. So there are some salary lines that have some overages, and to make sure we can still do the same prepay we want to do. And also there's a school committee contingency. Gary has requested that we transfer 91,000 or approve the transfer of 91,000 to cover those overages so that we end up the year pretty close to the total budget. So that was a motion coming out of BNF to recommend to the full school committee to authorize the CFO to transfer 91,000 from the school committee contingency account to cover overages in various salary accounts. And so I'm going to move that right now. Okay. Any discussion?
Is there a second?
Yeah, thank you. Can you just sort of explain like how do we have an overage in salary?
Gary, can you help us? Can you jog my memory and explain to the committee as what the overages are in what areas?
Sure, the overage is, the largest one was in the food, where we had food services charged to the clerical account. The reason why we had the food services charged the last 2 months was to build up the revolving fund in the food service account by transferring the money for the payment from the revolving fund to the general fund. We allowed the revolving fund to increase, and so that's why we decided to do that in the last 2 months, because we weren't sure about next year on the food service program, if they were going to provide free meals like they did this year. So we wanted to build that fund up, and that's why we drove the account into a deficit just for those 2 months.
And the rules, according to my recall, is that the auditor wants that food service revolving account to have enough funds in it to get us started for the school year, to be able to pay for the food and supplies that we start the school year off with.
So typically the salaries would come from the revolving account. By taking them out of the operating budget, you allow the revolving account not to be paid down too much. So we have the amount we need to start the year.
Yeah, we expect to have a couple $100,000 in the food service revolving fund. So it was important to build that fund up for next year.
Okay. Maria, can we have a roll call vote?
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Mayor Verga,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Person Clancy.
Yes. And the other item that's coming out of BNF is the approval of the fiscal year 2023 budget.
Gary, can you summarize there were very minimal changes from what you've seen before, but Gary can summarize them for you.
You can
Yeah,
summarize.
we,
I will also,
Oh, sorry.
I'll also report that the city council did approve our budget as presented, which we're very grateful for, so they have not asked us to do any changes. Okay, Gary.
yes, on the budget for this year, we expect to come in right at budget. So a very successful budget year. There's still some expenses that will occur in the next 2 months as we make final payments in June. Those will occur in July. And then there'll be some journal entries, moving some money from grants to the general fund and vice versa. But we generally expect to break even, come right in at budget, and the budget will be finalized typically in 2 to 3 months as when the city closes the year end. So again, very successful year on the budget.
And then for FY '23, Gary, I think I remember a few minor changes. Not in the bottom line of the FY '23 budget, because we want to vote the committee wants to vote to approve that.
Yes, on FY '23 budget that is ready to be approved. No changes to the budget. We did change one schedule in one of the tabs. I think it's tab 10 for out of district tuition. Tuition expenses, we anticipate to increase another $100,000. It's always a moving target, the out of district tuition, but that's the latest information. We offset that 100,000 by increasing the prepaid tuition. So that will have essentially no effect on the budget, but an internal change that I wanted to bring the committee, make you aware of that change. Other than that, there's no other changes, and it's all set to be approved. It's the same budget that was approved by the city.
I move that we approve the final fiscal year 2023 budget in the amount of $46,988,897.
Second.
Discussion. Just say one more time, thank you to the administration and the council for really hearing the needs of the district and bringing it forward.
Well, and thank you to the committee, the BNF committee in particular, and to the administration and your financial team, and everybody across the district who pitched in to make this budget what it is. And I wholeheartedly support it, again, like I did when it first came through. So I think we're gonna have a pretty good year in this city.
Great work, Gary. Thank you very much. Okay,
You're welcome.
we can vote.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Mayor Verga,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
and Chairperson Clancy.
Yes. Okay, and the only other action item we have is acceptance of grant, the fiscal year 2023 summer learning program expansion grant in the amount of 50.
I'm sorry, Kathy. I believe there was one more action item coming out of BNF, and that was the monthly transfers.
That was on the consent agenda.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
All right,
my apologies.
sorry. So the summer learning program expansion grant in the amount of $50,000.
I so
I would like to know what it is.
This is, we were able to get the initial grant last summer to help offset some of the costs of the K-5 ELA and math summer program that we started last year. And kudos to Eamon and Tola. This came out and it had an incredibly short turnaround time, just a few days really, maybe less than a week. And she really did the lead work on it, and I helped out where I could, and we got the $50,000. And that goes directly to it. We had budgeted the monies in ESER 3. This will do two things. One, it'll offset a significant amount of the money we had budgeted, which lets us do more in the next 2 years. Also helps pay for, or fully pays the partnership with the YMCA this year. They had a funder last year who underwrote all of the work that we did with the YMCA, which does the afternoon part. So we did pay a bit for that. That wasn't there this year, so we knew we had to scramble and try to find a grant, and that's what that goes toward. So that'll be expended this summer.
That's good. Kathy, sorry. Is that, I remember last summer the kids went to Spindrift.
Yep.
Is that what they're doing again this year?
They're going to Spindrift, I believe, one of the days. They have developed a good program at the Y for, so they'll finish it West Parish at noon and take bus over to the Y for the afternoon. We have 52 students who will be going in the afternoons to the Y and then to Spindrift once a week. That pays for the transportation and full afternoon, 4 days a week at the Y plus day at Spindrift. That's what this grant is covering.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Mayor Verga,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes. Okay. That concludes the action, and anything to report on the building, in the school?
No, I mean, I just give a quick update. The naming committee will, as I mentioned just briefly earlier, will bring forward the semifinalists in middle of August to the committee. And at that point, then we'll have a public presentation of, they're creating presentations on those, or we'll create presentations on those names. And those presentations will be done publicly and made available publicly. So we can get input on those 10 names that get down to 3%. That's the, in terms of the building itself, it continues to be built. I have not been by recently, so, but they're making good progress.
Yes, Laura?
So I maybe should have asked this during the superintendent's report, but just an update on the Beeman playground.
Okay. Gary, so I gave an update.
No, you said we were gonna get an update.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. So so we're moving, so sorry. Sorry, I did. And I developed the presentation. I did not show it to you tonight. If you give me a moment, I can do that. If that's okay. We'll take all of you fine.
Kathy, well, superintendent's taken for that. I have one item for consideration. The remote meeting rules potentially in the Senate budget could be extended through December 2023, but they could not. So I think we should start thinking ahead about having some human interaction at our meetings. I mean, I don't ever want to lose the Zoom aspect, but at some point we have to let the people back in. So we should start thinking ahead. I think the school department via our current facilities are ahead of the city side. And I think we need to break the ice on the school committee side. So they're give a little nudge on the city side.
Yeah, what do you think about where the logistical layout?
Right, whether it's here or somewhere to Medley, but you know, just thought I'd throw that out there because there is always the potential that there could be a no vote at this Senate, you know, in the conference committee, that there is no extension. So, but even still, it's only until next December. Right. A year and a half, right? So better to plan ahead instead of being surprised later.
So we still have a year and a
We
half.
still have a year.
If
they vote
yes.
If they vote yes, but if they vote no, then it's immediate.
I think it's, I don't think it's needed, but it might be later this year. But- Right.
And where is the city now, Mayor? Are they strictly Zoom still?
It was
or-
strictly Zoom, and the city council actually just voted to go back to all Zoom. They were doing like this setup for a couple of meetings, but they decided to pull the plug, literally. So, and we just don't have we are having hybrid meetings, we have the ability at the harbor master's office, but it's very small groups, and you can't limit it. If 400 people show up, you gotta let them in. So that's why I've been, because schools have the facilities that are hybrid ready, it might be better if we start on the site.
I have to give a verbal update, and Gary, you're gonna help me out with this, but we are ready to go in terms of the layouts are finalized, and the schedule is set, and but because of this timelines and the work, the demolition of the playgrounds will happen in early fall, and we expect the playgrounds to be built in October. Right, Gary, do I have that right?
Yes, October, and will be finalized in November. As some items may take a little longer lead because they have long lead items, but most of it will be in October, and just a slide or two will be delayed till November.
It does mean that demolition happens, I believe, in the summertime, and so both schools are aware, the leadership of both schools and the PTOs of both schools are aware of that they won't have a playground for those first 2 months, basically. They will make, contingency plans. They'll, of course, have the outdoors. Those are, 2 of our schools that have, great outdoor space. But that's just a matter of timing. The process has been, we work with an engineer who's helped us sort of work with providers in terms of getting designs, and in terms of, and then those designs, those initial, both schools had information gathering from students and from staff and from families. They built their processes on those, but they gathered information, a lot of input. Then with our designer, they put together ideas and shared ideas. He gave them initial ideas in terms of like layouts, that sort of thing, also materials and types of structures. Gave feedback on that, and then he returned them again with modified versions, and that allows us to go to to seek to it's not getting bids, because it's not that, but to get to then put that out to essentially the bid, and then have vendors sort of respond to the layouts and the designs we're looking for with their version of comparable elements. And that's happening. Gary, what's the timeline for that process in terms of the procurement and purchasing?
Yeah,
process?
we just today, we got final confirmation from both schools that they confirmed the layout and the equipment. And so the next step is to work with the city's procurement officer. This is going to be in 2 steps. The first step is to get quotes on comparable equipment from other vendors, playground equipment. And then the second step is to bid with a general contractor to actually move the layout of the playground to level it and get it prepared for the equipment to be installed by the successful vendor. So it was a good process. Both PTOs worked, had representatives from each school, and it was really a process, collaborative process, and they chose the equipment that they wanted. And one of the big determining factors was to have enough equipment to satisfy the number of students that would be using the equipment at one time. So at Beeman, it was 120 students, and at Plum Cove, it was 85 students. And so we did develop a layout and equipment to be able to support and have students not be bogged down waiting, but be able to be engaged in the equipment and have fun. So it's a good process.
One last piece, DPW will help with demolition, and then as Gary said, the general contractor does the earth moving and leveling of the field and of the spaces. And then it'll be it'll be a partially community build of having the families help out with some of the installation.
Can I just ask one question?
Okay.
Given that the bids, that the things haven't been ordered and there's not a contractor yet, do you think you can stay on this timeline?
I think so. We haven't heard otherwise yet. And that's
Okay.
always the way it is sort of these days is, you know, we go on a schedule and we stick with that schedule until we're told otherwise.
Okay.
But we do. The bidding the quote process isn't as involved as a full bid process because all the vendors will be on combis and state procurement
Okay.
contracts. So that'll, you know, quicken things pretty much. But that's, again, from our engineer who we're working with, at this point, he tells us we're still in good shape.
Okay. Thank you.
That of course can change, but we'll let you know if it does.
All right. Want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Gloria?
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Greg Berger,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
and President Glansky.
Yes.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.